Hey, thanks for coming to another CERENE seminar where we share about climate change, sustainability, resiliency, and Lahaina, connecting to land and each other and service to life. Add that part on the end. Today we have a really special guest, Dr. Gregg Nakano. And in the room, we also have Patsy Roa and Brianna Donnelly, who presented last week, who may be chiming in at various moments if Gregg would like. But yeah, today's presentation is going to be part 3 of this little mini series that we've been featuring about the work we did last summer in the Marshall Islands. And so if you missed last week, we did actually manage to record that one. We'll make sure that it goes out for you all that attended, and then if you missed, you can catch up. But today, Gregg's going to give us a little bit of a bigger picture overview of how the work we did over there fits into his program that he's been supporting for several years now. And I asked him also to share a little bit about kind of the context for working in the Marshall Islands and the climate impacts. And Gregg, just to let you know, we did get some tough questions last week. If we have time, there's like plenty of space, I think, for Talk Story at the end to revisit some of those things. All right, so Gregg, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the mic over to you, and I'm going to spotlight you, and then let me know. Well, actually, you have sharing permissions, so you can screen share whenever you like. And then, Chris, are you recording already?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. With that, yeah, I'll hand it over to you, Gregg. Thank you so much for joining. We've got good groups in person, and more people are coming online as well. So to you, Gregg.
Awesome. Well, first, I just really wanted to say thank you to obviously Dr. Lenentine and to Brianna and to Hedzi for making the trip out this summer. And really, we've had the chance to work with Dr. Miku now for over 1.5 years. And the idea is what we're trying to do is really learn from you and the class, meaning that the CERENE project, I think, is the right way to do things, where you're working directly with the local community and you're doing bottom-up listening surveys and engaging with the community leaders where they're at. And rather than coming up with some really cool, slick idea that's generated in the local, state, or national capital, what you're doing is listening to people and really hearing what they care about most. So about 1.5 years ago, had a chance to meet with Miku and got a chance to attend one of the community sessions down in, I think it was Kapolei. And through that process, decided we really wanted to replicate that in Kwajalein. And then in March of 2023, we were able to introduce the Kwajalein Mayor, Hirata Kabua, and some of KALGOV representative Kwajalein Atoll government to Miku and some of the KCC team at the campus. And then this spring, again, March of 2024, we did a deeper dive, and we had a little more deliberate conversation, and that's when we had a chance to meet Hedzi, and we found out that Hedzi and especially his father were really well known and respected by the Marshallese in Kwajalein. And so we invited Hedzi and Dr. Miku and Brianna to come join us, and the purpose is to build community resilience from the bottom up. And if there's a concrete product that we're going to measure ourselves by, it's updating the 2 disaster response plans that they have. So the first disaster response plan was written around 1990, and that's the only disaster response plan that they have right now that's written in English. The more recent disaster response plan is from 2016, but it's completely in Marshallese. So if there was a need to actually do a response from the United States or from Hawaii, it'd be pretty hard to do things in a way that would benefit the community. So that's the work in progress. That's kind of the stage that, or the scene that we had going forward. And then I'm gonna try and see if I can share my screen. Can you guys see that? Okay, so how many of you, I can't, kind of hard to do a show of hands, but hopefully you have an idea of what's happening in the Pacific right now with regard to what's called great power competition. So for the past 20 years, from 2001 until about 2022, the United States was focused on what has happened is military attention has shifted from the Middle East to the Pacific Islands. So what you're going to increasingly see is the United States military.
I think your microphone volume dropped a little bit. So sorry, but it was better when I think you're holding it, or yeah. As loud as we can go on our side, I think. But we were hearing you up until recent.
It's not good. Oh, you can't hear me?
Just a little.
It's so quiet
low.
somehow.
Try and move to another location, but
Oh, that's better. That's better.
okay. So
Oh, you were covering the microphone with your hand, apparently.
like that, is that better?
That's much better.
Yes.
All right. So what you're looking at right here is the primary reason why the United States military is interested in Kwajalein Atoll. These are multiple reentry vehicles, nuclear warheads. So they, the saying is, if you're ever seeing this, this would be the last thing you would see. And what the United States uses Kwajalein Atoll.
I think we're just only looking at your title slide. Are we supposed to be seeing another graphic?
Nope, this is it.
Okay,
This is
just making sure.
these beautiful, yeah, no, these beautiful lights are basically a time lapse photo of the nuclear, they're dummy warheads, but this is the nuclear reentry vehicles. And each one of these would be a nuclear bomb. So what the United States uses Kwajalein for is basically that's the bullseye that they calibrate and make sure that when the United States sends a nuclear missile at an enemy, it's able to accurately hit the target. And that's kind of the context in which we have been working with the Marshallese. So this is Admiral Locklear. He was the 4-star admiral who was in charge of Pacific Command. So those of you who know where Camp Smith is, that's where all the headquarters of all the U.S. military that operates throughout the entire Pacific region is commanded from. And it's the largest combatant command. It's has the most people in it. And as the military says, when they describe it, it's Hollywood to Bollywood. So it covers from India all the way to California. And it's penguins to polar bears. So it goes from the South Pole to the North Pole. When Admiral Locklear was asked what he thought the biggest challenge would be for Pacific Command in 2013, he said, climate change really shocked everyone. But already at that point, he recognized the number of people that would be on the move, the number of societies that would be challenged would really disrupt the international order. So, we said this is in the context of U.S.-China great power competition. So I don't know if you've heard of One Belt, One Road. But essentially, One Belt, One Road is the Chinese grand strategy for how they are going to build economic alliances, both on land and sea, to replace the existing international border. And what you see over on the right-hand side is the exclusive economic zone that Palau, Federated States of Micronesia, and Republic of Marshall Islands have. What you're looking at is, when Admiral Locklear was talking about climate change being the biggest challenge, in the 21st century, this is what he was talking about. So, if you're looking at population, if you're looking at the ability to grow food, if you're looking at some of the, different ways in which people are fighting in the 21st century, looking at the economic power. Essentially, the United States in 1950 was the dominant power, and by 2050, it's not going to build, but by 2050, essentially China will be the largest economy in the world. United States and India will be essentially tied for second and third place. And then on the bottom right, you're seeing post-industrial warfare, meaning that if you're looking at AI warfare or, cyber warfare, it's already ongoing. And as you have an increased population and you have ecosystem collapse, you're going to have ransomware attacks, you're going to have election interference, you're going to have all sorts of things going on. So the individual populations aren't going to be able to make decisions based on true information. And this is kind of where we started everything in 2016. So about 8 years ago, we reached out directly to the Marshallese leaders in Kwajalein and basically started what CERENE has been doing with the community leaders across Hawaii. And what we wanted to do was basically understand what they cared about, what they were thinking, and then how do we work with them to address the challenges and priorities that they have. This graphic here is what we share with our American colleagues to help them understand why it's important and why it matters. So the Marshall Islands is that little red ellipse, and it's roughly 800,000 square miles, which is roughly the size of Mexico. And it's one of the first climate, it's going to be one of the first climate victims of the 21st century. So the Department of Defense has done research, and they've determined that the Marshallese are going to lose their fresh water between 2035 and 2065. So in the next probably 20 to 30 years, all the land vegetation is going to die, and they're going to turn into basically uninhabitable sandbars. The lessons that we learn in Kwajalein over on the red circle, hopefully are going to be shared with Hawaii here and figure out how do we take their best practices and lessons learned and help Hawaii and CERENE and the teams that you're working with live better, healthier lives. And then those lessons and best practices will also be shared with the coastal communities of the continental United States. The idea that we've been working with since about 2006 is bringing together students, cadets, and midshipmen. So undergraduate students from civilian colleges and universities, as well as cadets and midshipmen are receiving service academy. And our idea is bring them to, you see COFA in the middle, that's Compactor Free Association. So bring them to the seminar and begin working to figure out how are we collectively, your generation, going to build systems that are going to be able to sustain coastal communities impacted by climate change when you're in a position. That's what we're trying to do, basically raise future wayfinders. This is a picture from 2019. And what we did was we had Coast Guard Academy cadets and students from Whitman College, international cadet from Singapore, and they worked with the Marshallese High School students. And what we were trying to do is do community resilience, starting with a demographic survey. You can see that's the goal. And for those of you who aren't familiar with where it is, that little circle there, that dotted line represents the exclusive economic zone. And then Kwajalein, within the Marshall Islands, is located there. Within Kwajalein Atoll, let me go back here. So you can see it's sort of like a boomerang or a dolphin, banana. Within Kwajalein itself, if you go down to the bottom tip, that's kind of where the Marshallese community, the bulk of the Marshallese live on Ebi. And what you have between the American military base and Ebi is essentially a tale of two cities. So on the American base, if you look down in the middle line, it's about 800 acres, and they've got about 1,200, 1,300 people living there. And on the Marshallese side, you've got about 80 acres and anywhere from 12,000 or more people there. They don't actually know, and they have a pretty high turnover. But essentially what you have is you have a population density of almost 100 times on Ebi what you do on the American base. And then if you look from left to right, you can kind of compare what the building standards are and what the infrastructure looks like. And we went through and did a demographic survey. What they found was people live 10, 15, 20 people to a household. And when we're talking about a household, if you look at the picture, many of the houses are 2x4 or 4x4 framing with plywood walls and corrugated tin roofs. And the most crowded house that we found in that demographic survey was 44 people living in a single household. So these are really the issues that the Marshallese living on Ebi are wrestling with. And what we're trying to do is, again, replicate what CERENE is doing with different communities in Hawaii to figure out how do we help Marshallese identify what they care about most, and then begin to develop plans to improve their quality of life in a way that is going to help improve health, education, and disaster risk reduction within the context of climate change. So what I'd like to do is maybe stop there and kind of open it up for questions before I go on to the next thing. Do you have any questions based on that?
All right, Greg, I'm walking over to help facilitate. All right. Okay, so thank you so much, Greg, for sharing and just providing a little bit more context from what we saw the last couple of weeks.
I think he wants to do it more. He wants to do a
Yeah,
separate.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So now we're gonna open up for questions, and I'm just gonna help share it out if people can't hear things. And then also in the chat, you all are able to leave questions for Greg in the chat, and we can answer them that way. So I'm gonna start out with in person here. And then those of you who are online, if you want to add your questions in the chat, then we can get to those. So questions for Greg, and they can also be carryover questions from last week as well. And Nim, go ahead. I think he should be able to hear you, so.
So in the whole Kwajalein Peninsula of all the islands, why is everybody at Ebi? Are the other islands not really livable?
So the reason is jobs. So and Kedzie, you could jump in because I don't speak Marshallese, and Kedzie probably had some very interesting questions, but the base has about 1,250 Americans, and every day about 1,000 Marshallese get on the ferry and go work on the base. And what they do is a lot of the unskilled labor. So mow the lawns, clean the pools, flip the burgers. They do have people who work for the military contractors, you know, forklift operator and things like that. But a lot of it is kind of like just physical labor. And because the jobs in Kwajalein are rather limited, the base is the largest employer. So someone might work on the base and then they'll come back to their house, which has 15 or 20 people, and their salary then goes and is shared with everyone else in the household.
Got a question from Bree, and then we'll go.
Yeah, mine connects.
Yeah.
Do you know about how much do they get paid at the base? I know it might vary.
Hedgie, do you remember? I don't know the exact amount, but I do know though that they get paid according to Marshallese hourly rates, and so someone who's American might be working on the base, who's doing the exact same job. In fact, Marshallese person, but the American, what I understand, the American would get paid at American minimum wage, and the Marshallese would get different salary.
Okay. And then, does that connect or it's a new topic?
Yeah, connects.
Okay, go ahead, add on, and then we'll go back.
Right, it connects. So, the Marshall Islands is not part of the United States, but are they still at the whim of America, would you say? Because they rely on the jobs.
Etsy? Right.
Oh, he's got his camera. Hey, Etsy, yeah.
There he is. What do you think?
Nemo, what's the question again?
I
Oh, you
said
look-
the Marshall Islands, they're not part of the United States, but would you still say that the citizens of Ebi are at the whim of America? Like they still kind of controlled by the US because they rely on them for jobs.
They're still reliable. I mean, United States has done so much that I think I don't know how to explain. But yeah, Marshall Islands still depends on US for a lot of reasons. And then it all started from the atomic bomb as well. So everything is kind of, I think what we're trying to do right now is trying to help each other out at this point. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Thank you. I think the answer, is if you look economically and you just do pure economics, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 20 or 30% of the entire GDP is foreign support. So whether it's the United States or some of the other nations, they provide about 20 or 30% of the entire Marshallese GDP. So, short answer, probably yes, and certainly yes from a national security perspective, because the Compact of Free Association essentially turns over the responsibility of national security to the United States. So the United States is essentially the Marshall Islands military.
Thank you.
Okay, to the back here, yeah.
Is it possible to reverse, stop some of the delays of the climate change right now?
Okay, did you guys hear that question?
The freshwater.
Okay, so I'll just translate, make it a little louder. So the question is it possible to reverse some of these climate change impacts? Is it possible to maintain the freshwater stores in some way? Greg, you're on mute.
Thank you very much for that question. Let me see if I can do this. This. Can you see that? Did that go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see that.
Thank you very much for that answer, asking that question. So this is, hopefully this provides a little bit of that answer.
Yeah,
So,
that's perfect.
so what you're looking at is the DOD study that was done. And basically on the right-hand side, you can see how the groundwater or the freshwater lens sits on top of the salt water. And essentially, if you have an overwash event, like what happened in January, it might take 1 to 2 years of rainwater before it recharges the freshwater lens. So you can think if you have 2 or 3 overwash events in that 2-year period, it'll never recover. And so if you look down on the bottom, those bullet points, it says basically groundwater wells, right? If you were to go onto Ebi or go on to Enebuj or Bujigu or whatever, like one of the 95 different islands, little islets that make up Kwajalein, and you're to dig down, right now you still can get fresh water on most of them, right? But by 2035 or 2065, you're going to dig down into the soil and it's going to be brackish water. So to answer your question, in all probability, no, you won't be able to reverse this. It's only going to get worse. And this next slide is taken directly from the Marshall Islands National Adaptation Plan. And if you look in the mirror, or rather in the middle, you can see 2023, that's, when it was published, and then you can see the line that's moving across talking about how the Marshall Islands national government is hoping that they're going to be able to remain viable until 2150, right? That's still 125 years away. But this is all based on a 1.5 to stay alive, right? So this means that this timeline that you have in the middle, right? The long light green, 2040 dark green, 2050 blue, 2070 orange, right? Red, and then purple. This is based on the belief that humanity is going to be able to stay under 1.5 degrees. And Tina Stege, one of the primary Marshallese representatives for climate change, right? So this is what she's looking at. Unfortunately, that little circle there this was basically taken from the past 12 months. This is the European Weather Agency or Climate Agency. And if you look at the 1.5, right, you see that on the left-hand side, that's 1.5. And the red line that you see that's over 1.5 is the average global temperatures from July of 2023 until June of 2024. So essentially, we've cracked 1.5. And unless something really, really weird happens, we're not going backwards. So the whole idea,
Real quick, Greg, does everybody understand what that means? 1.5, you'll hear this word a lot, 1.5, 2 degrees. Yeah. All right, go ahead, keep going.
so to answer the question, unless something really, really weird happens, no. You know, they're not gonna, the Marshall Islands will not survive till 2150. And this is a shot taken from Greenland. And essentially, this was taken about 4 or 5 years ago. And already you're having ice melt on top of the, the ice. So they're not actually, obviously. They're not.
We have another question here.
Sure.
Once they're allowed to spawn, how is
Okay, so this is, these are the good, tough question time. So Greg, the question is, knowing that climate change is a global issue, who can the Marshallese people turn to? Who's gonna step up to help support them?
Good question. The Marshallese National Adaptation Plan, let me go back to this. So this plan here actually lays out down to the dollar all the things that the Marshallese will need to stay alive until 2150. The price tag for all those climate adaptation measures is $35 billion. So if someone wants to take 35 billion and divide by the total population of Marshallese, and we can go, there's two numbers that are used, 40,000 and the other number is 70,000. But if you take the number 70,000, right, and you divide 35 billion by 70,000, that will give you the per person cost that the Marshallese are asking everyone, right? Everyone in the world to essentially come up with. So when you say, who can they turn to? They're turning to everyone. They're turning to me, they're turning to you, they're turning to the United States, they're turning to the UN. That's what they need if they're going to remain a country. That's what we're trying to help them with.
I have a question, Greg.
Sure.
This is a question that I'm getting a lot in this work. So I shared, when I did my presentation on the first of these 3 series, I shared a sneak preview for some of the work that we'll be doing this next summer with the telehealth study, but also talking about the idea of a woman's resilience center, a cultural space that could become a model hub for the low-lying atoll. The question I'm getting more broadly is, knowing that everyone will have to leave, why invest in the space? And then a more specific question is, what? They're going to run out of water in 20 years? Why are they trying to build new buildings? This is just a general question I'm getting. Betsy also, right? This is what people are asking me. So I'd love to, yeah, hear what you guys think, or what's the best way to answer that?
Hetty, should I give you a chance to answer first before I give it a shot?
Now you go ahead.
All right. So for the people who asked that question, I would ask them, if your house was falling down, would you want to just leave it and go to a place that you don't speak the language and you don't know anything about the city that you're going to? Or would you want to stay as long as possible in the place that you're at. And if you look at the current migration patterns, there are a lot of Marshallese who are leaving, but there also are Marshallese who basically are there or actually are in the States and actually going back to the Marshall Islands because they're saying, I'm going to die and I'm going to be buried here, right? I would rather die in the place where I was born and I know, even though, you know, it's untenable or unsustainable, rather than live among strangers in a place I don't speak the language, I don't like the food, I gotta, you know, I'm a third-class citizen, everyone looks down on me. I want to go back where I'm welcomed. So if you think about Hawaii and you think about how local people or Native Hawaiians or whoever, you know, like how people treat the Pacific Islanders or the Marshallese, you have to ask yourself, okay, what do you want to do, right? How would you respond? Even if you knew your house was falling down, would you stay as long as you could, or would you move, knowing that, you know, people are going to treat you like that, and you're not going to be able to have the same kind of community that you did in your home? How'd I do, Hedgie?
Perfect.
Perfect. Betsy, you want to add to that? Anything else to add?
I think it's just common sense for this question for me. You know, if somebody's home is somebody's home. You cannot just say, oh, gotta go.
I was, it's a very helpful metaphor. Thank you, Greg. And let's see, another layer to add to it is, what if that house was your family's house, your grandparents' house, the house that your ancestors had built?
Yeah, but it's the question about building is not sustainable. Also, right? That's what-
And so the question, the person just asked, the question was asking, isn't this just about building a new building? So the house is a metaphor. Right? So that we're not actually talking about just a house. It's a metaphor for a cultural heritage, legacy, identity, worldview, language, sacredness that exists, everything in that one place.
It's like instead of just a house going on, it's like a house, but it has all your family heirlooms in it.
A house that has all of your family heirlooms in it, all of the
This
most
history, all the culture.
valuable things, and the places in the house where you sat and told the stories, where you heard something, where you smelled the smell of your grandmother's cookies or whatnot, and that you could never recreate that anywhere. So it's, yes, but so, okay, so Greg, Hetzi, anything to add to that? Is it just a house, like more to add to that metaphor or that way to
Well,
help people understand?
But I think the other thing is, if you remember the map where we had the Marshall Islands in red, and then we had Hawaii in orange, and we had yellow, and then we had the United States in green. Part of the reason why the military and the US government are interested in helping us out and supporting what we're trying to do to help the Marshallese is the Marshallese are statistically going to be the world's first climate refugees. So to give you, you know, if you think about the population of the world, it's going to be over 9 billion people by 2050. And then if you think about where are all the people living in the world, 40% of the world's population lives within 100 kilometers or 60 miles of the coast. So the challenges that the Marshallese are facing now are kind of like a trailer or a preview of how 40% of the world are going to have to adapt in the next 30 to 40 years. So whatever best practices or lessons learned or new ideas we can come up with that the Marshallese are helping us come up with are going to help all the people who are forced to move. So, you're reading about what's happening with Hurricane Helene and, all these different typhoons and hurricanes coming through. This is climate change, right? And then if you read some of the literature, the UN, international insurance companies, they're saying that they think by 2050, 25 years away. So I don't know, whatever age you are, just add 25 and think in 25 years, you're going to have this is again, scientists and government officials, they think there's going to be 200 million to 1.2 billion climate refugees, right? So right now, all we're doing is we're trying to help the Marshallese stay at home in good health with, good jobs for as long as possible. But really what we're trying to do is learn how do we help coastal communities that are under threat of, destruction so that we can share those lessons learned in the next 10, 20 years with the 3.2 billion people who are going to be pushed around, on the coastlines and the 200 million to 1.2 billion climate refugees that we can expect by 2050. Hopefully that helped.
That's helpful. I wrote some of those stats on the board as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do tell people that, right? So that the work that we are doing out there, and especially the solutions too, right?
Right.
It's the preview, right, of coming attractions for the world. What we experience out there is the experience of the world, especially the overcrowding was really, that's right now, right? So that's really clear. I wanted to give people online a chance to ask questions. If you guys want, for those that are still online, I think we still have quite a few of you. If you wanted to put any questions into the chat, I knew Hale would have a question. Oh, long one. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to read it out loud for the people, or you guys can see it. Should I read it out loud? Okay, I got those. All right. All right. So Greg or Betsy, over to you if you want to tackle that in some way.
Is this the one from Hale? Is it Hale or Hale? Hale Takazawa?
Yeah, my mom gave it to me as Hale. My firm is Hale.
Well, house, healthy house, right? Hale means healthy, right? So
Yeah.
Hale or Hale Hale. Oh, that's an awesome name. Yes. So here's the thing is that, so what I would invite you to do is 3 to 7 March, the Kwajalein Mayor and KALGOV. Hopefully we're going to be with Dr. Miku again, and we're going to be actually having a updated disaster response plan, and we're going to be talking about all the things, that, KCC is doing with CERENE. But I guess the best way to say this is that just like you cannot talk about the United States without starting to recognize that you have red states and blue states, you have, right? So you can't, there are some things you can talk about America, it's Americans, right? But once you start diving down to the second, third, fourth level, I think there are definitely Marshallese in the United States and in Hawaii who 100% are embracing what you're proposing, right? So how do they basically come to Hawaii, or where might they go that allows them to recreate their sustainable indigenous practices that are culturally reflective of what they value in a way that will continue to ensure that the language, traditions, the cultures are perpetuated, right? 100% yes. There are some people who are on the other end of the spectrum and are like, hell no, I'm not going to go. And the old story about, the person being invited to leave before a hurricane hits, right? First the guy comes in the car, and then he comes in the helicopter, and then he comes in the, right? Come on. He's like, so So there are people who are like, hell no, I'm never gonna go, and you're never, so the whole thing is save the willing first. So what we're trying to do is if they want to come, how do we help them work with people like you, right? The healthy house, hail hale, right? And just like, okay, let's do it. On the other hand, there are people on the complete other side who are like, I'm never leaving. And we're actually trying to help them too. We're trying to bring them Starlink. We're trying to bring renewable energy solutions. We're trying to connect them so that they have telehealth options. And then the real population that we're trying to empower are the kids, because they're the legacy. And either they're going to come to Hawaii and they're not going to be able to speak, read and write English. They're not going to have numeracy skills. They're going to get low paying, service industry jobs in Waikiki doing tourism stuff. If we can get them working with projects like CERENE or flying, for example, hyperspectral drones that are going to be able to pick up coconut rhinoceros beetles on coconut trees and stuff like that while they're 12 and 13 and 14 and 15, by the time they hit Hawaii, they got a $70 an hour job, $70 an hour job waiting for them, because they know stuff that people in Hawaii don't know, right? And people will be like, wait, you're 25. How come you got 10 years of experience? Oh, when I was, 12 and 13, I was carrying all the equipment around for Dr. Miku, and we were doing all this stuff. And then, so, they graduate from high school, they come to Hawaii, they go to UH, and then by the time they're 25, they got a master's, got 10 years work experience, and they're actually doing the coding so that the, hyperspectral will pick out water, percentage of water inside the coconut leaves, and then be able to figure out what's a bug, CRB. This, we don't know where we're going. Every year it's different, but we are really diving in. And, luckily, we're working with Dr. Miku, and, going on the ground is really the way that we're going to learn what is useful and what is necessary and sustainable. And to that, I would welcome, you have a standing invitation if you want to come out, help us see no, I'm serious. This is all blind men and the elephant, because there are things we don't see until you or Hetzi or Brianna or whatever come with us, and you're going to go, you will say, hey, why is this way? And I'll look at you and I'll go, why is what this way? And you'll point it out. And I'm like, either I'll recognize it or I'll go, I still don't understand what you're talking about. Can you explain it? Right. So, would say March 3 to 7, that's our first face-to-face opportunity. But then, all of July, we're usually boots on the ground, and we have essentially until the water is at their ankles or knees, right? So as long as there's someone who won't leave, we are going to try and continue to go back again and again and again.
Cool. Very cool.
So Hale, we'll be hosting them here in spring, and definitely
Okay.
keep you posted on that. And you guys should meet and connect at some point. Hale is doing incredibly innovative resilience design work in Maui, and actually would have been top on my list to talk to Hale about the project that I was mentioning for the Women's Center and the Resilience Hub, and how to incorporate the design in a culturally informed way that's also, I don't know the right word for it, future focused, that can, as much as it can, be as resilient as possible to whatever we will face. So yeah, Hale, that's, guys should definitely all get lunch. And I was gonna take a moment to invite up Team C up here. And Chris, you should turn your camera on.
Team C.
Team C, wait, if we talk, will we all be on the camera?
Oh, let's stand apart.
Wait, we'll stand apart and then will it do it? Here.
Just get over it.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, if he's talking. All right, this wave to the owl. Okay, so this is Team C. This is the team we're hoping to bring out this next summer. So, and then Hetzi also is on there. So, and then Chris. So we're just getting started, but we're really excited, and hopefully this group will be interviewing members from CalGov when they come in March as well, to start looking at well, social acceptability of telehealth, and how to support the best possible implementation to make sure that it's useful and it's done in a way that's sensitive and helpful, basically. So that's our goal. So we'll keep sharing back on that, but I just wanted Team Z to come up and say hi. So. We still have a couple more minutes for maybe like time for maybe 2 more questions. So anyone, any other questions from folks online? I suppose I have a question for Greg, but I want to. Okay, do you guys have a question for online? Okay, we have. That's an interesting question. So, yeah.
Sorry, if they do decide to leave now, not everybody, or if they do, are they considered refugees still, or are they considered immigrants?
These are such good questions. Okay, first question was if the islands disappear, or say generically like that, what happens to the government? And then second question is then for those that have to leave or are you leaving, are they considered immigrants or are they considered refugees?
So if you know the answer to that question, you should go to the Secretary General of the UN and tell him what the answer is. No one knows. And in fact, the biggest challenge is that the current international logic for sovereignty is that it's a sovereign government that has the monopoly of legitimate violence in a specific bounded territory. And this has been the definition of what constitutes a government since the Treaty of Westphalia, right? So it's at least 300 to 500 years old. And so climate change is essentially invalidating that entire international sovereignty system. And quite frankly, no one knows what to do. So what we're trying to do is say, okay, if you talk to the people at the very top of this status quo system, those people have difficulty thinking what an alternative is because they bought into that system 40 years ago, 30 to 40 years ago, right? So if you want to have a system that actually reflects what the current realities on the ground are, you're not going to get it in the ivory tower, or you're not going to get it inside the, imperial city or inside the palace, because people in the imperial city, people in the palace, people in the center of the ivory tower have not really spent much time on the ground without electricity, without air conditioning, without running water, without food, and so if you want to find solutions that are relevant to the 40% of the population 100 kilometers next to the ocean, you're going to have to go to the people like the Marshallese who are living literally on the ocean. And that's where the true innovative, sustainable solutions are going to come from. And then we can bring those solutions that work, low cost, right? Low impact, high resilience. Then we bring those back to Honolulu, Washington, D.C., Paris, the New York UN headquarters in New York and stuff. The good ideas are not going to come from those locations. They're going to come from people on the ground, living by their fingertips on the edge.
With that, Greg, I want to give the final word over to Hetzi to say anything you want to add to. I know I never tell the students. You should just get students, you guys, when you go with me, I'm always going to do this. So Zach's already experienced it. Be ready. So I'm going to give the final word to Hetzi to share any last remarks, whatever it is, even if it's just thank you, to close out our session today. So over to you, Hetzi.
Sorry, you caught me. Of course. So I just want to add a little bit about the overcrowding situation. So there's not a lot of ice schools in the Marshall Islands, and so they usually send their kids over to Ibaya as well for high school. So that's one of the reasons why people come, besides working in the military base. And other than that, I think Craig really delivered well. But yeah, thank you all for listening.
Thank you, everybody. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, so to be
Thank you.
continued. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Hetzi, and thanks everyone online. We will have the recording available, and we'll see if we can audio engineer fix some of the quiet spots. That's you missed some of that. So yeah, so thanks everybody. And next week we are going to have a guest from an anonymous Fortune 500 technology company to share about leadership and resilience in the IT world. So he'll be here in person, so you guys will get to meet him. So that's, well, the person is not anonymous. His name's Luke Lenentine. He's my husband. So we're leaving the business, non-business, but ask me and maybe I can tell you later. All right. Thanks everybody online. We'll see you guys again next week. Thank you so much, Greg. And we'll be in touch. Bye guys.
Thank you.
Bye.